So one of the things that's really exciting for me about the new curriculum is that in one way, it's still being developed. We have the basic structure of it. We have a lot of the ideas about competency-based education and about an integrative and very practically based immersive curriculum. But we're still drawing together what the courses are going to look like, and the potential faculty of the new seminary is working on what those courses might look like. I think for me, one of the most exciting things is when I went to seminary at St. Paul School of Theology in Kansas City, Missouri in the early 90s, we had a lot of integrative courses, meaning that I had courses where, for instance, I was taking a worship class, but it wasn't just worship. It was the ethics and the sociology of worship. So how do we talk about the community issues that are going on in the midst of the life of worship? And so I had an ethics professor and my worship professor teaching the class together. When I took preaching, it was not just my preaching professor, it was also my theology professor. So it was one of those really cool things for me that I had seminary that was integrative from the very beginning. And when we started talking about the new curriculum, one of the things we wanted to make sure is that the students were impacted by not just one subject matter, but that there were a number of things that came together at once. And so this new curriculum, whatever the class structure comes out to be when we finalize everything, it's got this integrative, immersive capacity that I think is really exciting. For instance, I may be teaching a preaching class, and in the midst of that, when we're talking about funerals or we're talking about crisis preaching, the pastoral care person comes in and talks about how you combine preaching and pastoral care. When I'm talking about Black Lives Matter and I'm talking about issues around LGBTQ equality, I may have the ethicist come in and talk about the ethics of preaching around Black Lives Matter, around LGBTQ issues. When I'm talking about the multiple issues around the theology of preaching and framing your preaching around your theological understanding. May have a Baptist polity person come in and talk about their structure of the church and how preaching fits into that. Or I may have a systematic theology person come in and we go back and forth about what's happening theologically around particular sermons. That's exciting for me because it gives multiple opportunities for students to integrate their learning. They're not just sitting in a preaching class. They're talking about preaching. They're preaching in a context. They're talking about the funerals that they may have coming up in their field ed site that they can participate in, and they're thinking about pastoral care. And all of these things come together, and it really owns that learning doesn't happen in just one place at one time. There's multiple layers to it. And we're trying to make sure that whatever learning needs to happen, it can happen in a bunch of different places all at the same time, but also cumulative. And I think that helps students learn. I think it's an exciting thing for the new school. When the new seminary was announced back in January, there were a number of working committees that were organized, and one of those committees that was organized was the Curriculum Design Committee, the group that would begin to put together the basic structure of the curriculum. And I was asked by the president to serve on that committee. And there are 2 faculty persons from Gettysburg, 2 from Philadelphia, including the 2 deans and President Lose. And we started working on the curriculum back in the spring and began thinking about what can we do that's new, that's innovative, that's exciting. And one of the first things that came to mind was thinking about what do the students come to Philadelphia or Gettysburg or the new institution knowing, and how do we tap into their experience and their competency to then build on their education and create leaders for the 21st century. I think some theological programs, and this is not to bash others, but some theological programs, it's sort of an information dump. You come in and you get dumped a bunch of information. It's like a dump truck comes up, dumps it, and you got to figure out what that all is. And sometimes that assumes that you don't come with your own understandings and your own theological frameworks already, and you don't already come with a pretty clear sense of who you are. The new curriculum honors that everybody comes in at a different place, and that we're going to figure out what is your baseline, what do you come in with, and then how do we build upon that. And so thinking about a curriculum meant, how do we honor where people are in their lives, honor their basic understandings, and then build on top of that. And that's where competency-based education became a real hallmark of the direction that we're going. And over the next couple of months, we wrote competencies for the MDiv program. We're still working on the competencies for the other degree plans. But every time we sat down, it was about, what do we envision a leader needing to lead today's church and the future church, not the church of 50 years ago or 20 years ago or even the church right now, but what is the leading trends, what are the competencies that we want students to be able to have to face a church that's changing, that's shifting, that's going to have to do things differently for the future. And so every decision we made was based on, how do we create the best leaders for the future of the church? And those competencies came together. The faculties of both institutions were then invited to comment on those competencies. We moved forward to begin thinking about a basic structure of a curriculum. And then this fall, we had more conversations with potential faculty who may be a part of the new institution. And right now, those groups different groups are working on the curriculum and fleshing it out, thinking about classes and collaborations and the way that we can make this curriculum as integrative, as exciting as we possibly can. And it's one of those things that in the midst of a lot of transition and change, I have great excitement about the curriculum. I have a lot of enthusiasm for an institution that is at its very foundation thinking about what's best for students. What's best for students financially, what's best for students curricular-wise, and what's best for students for their learning capacity. And that's what's driven this entire curriculum. It's what's driven all the conversations we've had thus far, and I think it'll continue to drive the conversations as we finalize the last pieces of the curriculum. I think students are going to be energized by it. I think they're going to be excited by the new opportunities. I think they're going to be challenged by the integration and the participation and the way it's going to be immersed in field education and the way it's going to be collaborative across disciplines. And it's one of the things that I think is the most exciting for me about the new institution. In every institution that does any kind of curricular changes, there has to be teach-out plans for every student in every degree plan for how they're going to finish their degrees. And so every current student is going to have a plan that will get them through graduation using a matrix of options. Some students will transition to the new curriculum automatically. Some students will have courses that will overlap the old curriculum and the new curriculum, just as we did 3 or 4 years ago when we did the newest curricular design for LTSP. And one of the things that happens is you begin to think about, how do we best train our students so that they can be the best advocates for themselves in the new curricular atmosphere. And one of the things I find exciting is that we're not throwing out everything from the past. There's still going to be Bible classes, but they'll be more integrative than they have in the past. There's still going to be theology classes, but they'll have an integration with practical theology and with the Bible courses that maybe hasn't been completely apparent in the past. And there's still going to be classes in practical and integrative areas like pastoral care and preaching and all the different things that students have come to expect and to understand. So you're going to have Bible classes, and you're going to learn about the New Testament and the Old Testament, but also how you apply those in the midst of that learning. There's still going to be language, and there's still going to be opportunities for you to do concentrations. And so in some ways, there's going to be some similarity to what's gone on in the past, because you're still going to get the basic foundations of theological education, but they're going to be framed around your competencies and your needs to grow and learn, and at the same time this integrative approach, so that you're learning on multiple levels, and you're using your New Testament in your preaching, in your pastoral care, in your theological framing, all at the same time. So while there's a lot of new, there's also some basic foundational pieces that are going to be really important for students to understand, that just because you do a new way of teaching and a new way of learning, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have some of the basic principles of theological education that are still a part of it. But we're hoping what this does is it integrates our learning in a way that doesn't compartmentalize our learning, that I think in some curricular areas that's continued to happen in many different institutions. We want to make sure that this is exciting, that it's vibrant, that it's really integrative, and that it allows our students to bring their own learning, but also to be challenged and to grow in both the classic and disciplines that have been a part of theological education in the past, but also looking at new models for learning and for growing into the church of the future. And that's what's really cool, I think, about this new curriculum.